Appreciate you guys coming to the class. Excited to talk about this with you today. Want to set the stage. Think about something with me for just a minute. Imagine this scene. You've got a room full of men, and they are meeting to talk about a question, to try to answer a question together. And it's a really important question. What can we do to help this church grow? Now, none of them in this room have any experience in making a church grow, but they really care. And for the first time in a while, they're resolved to do something about it. And so each guy in this men's business meeting is going to bring up a different idea that the group could use to help them grow. So one by one, you scan around the room, and each guy has an idea that they've thought of, that they've brought up, that they want to discuss. So we'll go around the room as they share ideas. So one guy says, well, let's have a gospel meeting. We haven't had a gospel meeting in years, decades since I've been here. Let's try that. And so you know what he's told by the rest of the group? Well, that's for old people. That used to work, but that doesn't work anymore. Now, what this guy wanted to do was different. He wanted to invite in a certain speaker that the community already knew. He wanted to focus on the members actually inviting non-Christians. But it was too late. He'd been told that that doesn't work, and they move on to the next thing. The next guy tries his idea, and he says, well, let's have small groups. I've done a lot of study on that. I mean, the community churches are doing that. Look at what they're doing with small groups. And he's told, well, no, that's for liberal churches. Now, this guy wasn't saying let's replace the Sunday morning worship service with a feeling sharing session. He was thinking of opening his home on Tuesday nights and having a group of men that could come in and study and go slow enough that you could actually slow down and answer questions as you study. But it was too late. The group had already moved on and said, no, that doesn't work. Next, somebody said, well, what if we have a clothing giveaway? We'll reach out into the community. We'll be good neighbors. We'll let people know that we care and that we love them. And you know what somebody said? Well, that's going to bring in the wrong kind of people. And once they get the stuff, you know what will happen? They'll be gone. Now, this guy was talking about just being a good neighbor. He knew that God's kindness had brought him to repentance. And he hoped that the church's kindness might do the same thing in his community, but it was too late. Everybody had already said, no, that won't work, and moved on. The next guy said, I did some research, and there's a radio station in town, and they will give us some free time. We don't even have to pay anything. Each of us can just take one day in the week and do a short little devotional, and it'll go out and it'll be free. Well, the group knew for sure nobody listens to the radio anymore, so that's a waste of time. So that's not going to work. So let's move on to something else. One person said, well, let's mail out house to house, heart to heart. And somebody said, no, we tried that twice before a gospel meeting 12 years ago, and nobody came. And besides, it's expensive. Well, look, guys, it's 37 cents to customize, to print, and to mail. All right, off the commercial. And so they're told that's too expensive and that didn't work the one time we tried it. And so that won't work either. Let's move on to something else. Now, one of the teenagers that was in this meeting was getting discouraged. But he had just come back from a mission trip. And he had seen his idea work in person. And so he very confidently and boldly raised his hand and said, what if we try door knocking? And all with one accord, the brethren began to boo. Whatever they knew for sure door knocking doesn't work. Now, this was an important meeting because while they had not come up with anything that worked, they had made a comprehensive list of the things that didn't work, which included everything. Now, we've all been a part of some great meetings where good things happen, hopefully like what we're doing here this week, where we actually take these things and apply them. And hopefully we're learning from people that actually have already done these things at home and they're sharing out of expertise. But we've all been part of a business meeting like this as well, haven't we? And so we are left with, well, nothing works and nobody wants the truth. Even though the church has grown through the ages, and even though churches are growing in a lot of places now, some people are convinced that nothing works and nobody wants the truth. You know, the truth is, the devil wrote the phrase, it doesn't work. You hear what I'm saying? The devil wrote the phrase, it doesn't work. The interesting thing about all these things that I've just mentioned to you is I know somebody within the past year that was converted in each of these ways. Believe it or not, in Fort Payne, Alabama, the church there has a radio program. And a young guy, a worker, you know, I'm like this too sometimes. I drive around and I don't even want to think about anything, but I just want to just hear something. This young man, this blue-collar worker, would be doing that on the way home. He would be listening to the radio station. And wouldn't you know it, one day he found the Fort Payne Church of Christ radio program. He and his wife listened, they visited the congregation, and they have since been converted. Even radio. The only thing, listen to this, the only thing that doesn't work is not working. If we will work, God will do the rest. So our topic today, door knocking. Let me mention a disclaimer about this first of all. I'm not trying to necessarily sell you on door knocking as the main focus of your work, nor am I here to tell you it's the number one thing that churches should be doing to grow, because that's not true. It's hard, and it does not reach everyone. Think about a couple reasons. Why might someone be so opposed to door knocking? And I thought about two reasons. One is that they have seen it fail before, and they have been discouraged by it, and they might be led to believe that it doesn't work. So what I want to do today is to talk about some new ways that we can do it that are working, that we have field tested, that we can prove get results. And then number two, some people don't like it because it's hard work. You know what I can do about that? Nothing. It is hard work. But I like things in the church that are hard and that make me uncomfortable. Because if I'm too comfortable, I think that's probably a problem. So I want to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so we can't replace the hard work, but we shouldn't want to. But door knocking, though it's one of the hardest methods of reaching the lost, it's going to help us reach people that we may otherwise never meet. So I want to start with this. I want to start with some conversion stories. And I'm not going to go back and play out the church's greatest hits. Here's someone that was baptized after their door knocking 74 years ago. We don't have to go back that far. I want to share some conversion stories that I know of personally that have happened within the past couple of years. Now, some of them that I'm going to mention happened longer than that ago, but they have led to things that have happened recently. And I want to share some conversion stories because what I want to do is overwhelm you with the evidence that people want the truth, and literally every sound method that we can try will reach some people. So let's look at some people that have been converted by door knocking. This is Dylan Guthrie in the blue shirt. He posted this on Facebook and said, wet sleeves. And if you've ever baptized somebody, you know that feeling. Wet sleeves is good. Have you ever baptized somebody in that trout fishing uniform that they have? I just get soaked. All the water just comes straight in, and it makes it worse. But Dylan here got wet as he was baptizing somebody, and he posted about this on Facebook. Now, do you know where they met these two ladies? They met them door knocking 2 years ago on the Brotherhood-wide door knocking day. So Dylan, after he baptized her, he made this post on Facebook. Or he made a post. I stole it and made it my own, if that's all right. But I posted, and as you can see, 21 shares of this story. So what has Dylan done? Not only has he met two women, that they have worked on the relationship, cultivated it, they've earned a Bible study, they've studied the Bible with them, and now they've converted them. But because of the work that they've done, this message has been liked and has been shared, and other people have been encouraged to fight the lie that the devil wrote that fill in the blank doesn't work. What's interesting on this, too, you can see that there are 30 comments. I want to read one of the comments for you. I want to just actually share a screenshot of it and summarize it. The person that posted this is Rebecca Aponte Young. Does anybody know the Youngs from the Long Island Church of Christ in New York? All right. So Rebecca tells her story, and we went up there not long after she had posted this, and she told us more. She was at a college, and she was looking for a church home. Denominational, I think grew up in a Catholic background, didn't really even care where she went. And she'd ask somebody on campus, hey, do you go to church anywhere? No, I don't go to church. Oh, okay. Do you go to church anywhere? No, I don't go to church. So she was growing discouraged. So one day she's hanging out with a friend in his apartment, and she hears a knock on the door. Her friend goes to the door, answers the door. What do you guys want? Well, we wanted to see if you wanted to have a Bible study or come to church. Slams the door in their face. Rebecca's in a back room, and she hears the word church. She runs past her friend who's like, where are you going? Runs down the hall. And I'm sure these two guys are thinking, great, they're coming to let us have an earful of it. We get the point. You don't want it. And she says, hey, did you say church? Well, yeah, we're trying to see if anybody wants to go to church with us. And she said, I do. And Rebecca, from that knock on the door, became a Christian. And what she summarizes here is that she eventually converted 16 of her family members. She also converted some of the girls that were on the basketball team that she was on there in college. She converted one guy on the basketball team that eventually asked her to marry him. And they did. And this is her family now. Rebecca here on the right there with her 3 children. All 3 have attended Freed Hardeman. The daughter here, Leah, has attended Heritage as well. But remember, I didn't just say she converted a guy and they got married and had some faithful kids, which is important. Here's a picture of them at Freed and then from Polish in the Pulpit a few years ago where we met. But I said she converted her whole family. What does that look like? This is what that looks like. Every person of an accountable age in her immediate and extended family has become a member of the church. Why? Because somebody knocked on the door. Because they cared enough to try. Now, Rebecca has shared and encouraged a lot of people with this story. What's interesting, do you remember I said that the person that opened the door, slammed the door, his name was Charlie Gomez. What do you think eventually happened to Charlie Gomez? Well, Rebecca studied with him too. Here are the elders at the Long Island Church of Christ, and look who you see, Charlie Gomez, also their Spanish minister. He shut the door in their face, but eventually he was won over by his friend, all because of a knock on the door. Are you familiar with Latin American missions? They take mission trips all over the world, all over the Spanish-speaking world. Has anybody been on a mission trip with Latin American missions? All right, we need to have them come in here and speak next. I haven't been either, but I would like to go. But they take mission trips to Peru and Honduras and Guatemala and these different places. And so when COVID came, those countries would not let them in. And so Austin Fowler, who was working with them at the time, said, what are we going to do? We've got, people have already donated money. Churches have given money. People have asked off of work. People have all this free time. What can we do? And so he contacted us, and he said, house to house, and said, what can we do to work together to do one of these Latin American mission trips in America? And so we hosted the first one in Rome, Georgia at Oak Hill. And from that, these American mission campaigns were born. Now, my coworker, Rob Whitaker, is the one that runs these. And Rob, what's interesting about him and his relationship with door knocking is he knows door knocking works because one day he knocked on the door of this young man, Johnny Royal, who had been going denomination to denomination as he was growing up with his parents. But he'd been getting house to house. He knew some members of the church in the area. And then a knock on his door, he came to the door and answered. And then a year later, they started visiting the church where Rob was preaching. He was baptized. He went to preaching school. And he now preaches for the Franklin Church of Christ in Tennessee. How did Johnny hear about the church? Well, several ways, but what's the thing that really pushed him over the edge? That face-to-face contact and the knock on the door. And now Johnny is teaching other people. Some of the people that came from that and have been to some of our campaigns, our AMC campaigns. Let's see if I can go back. I think I broke it. Oh, there we go. I turned it off and on again. Yeah, that's the best thing you can ever do, right? Turn it off and on again. But this is Raul. He's gone to some of our American mission campaigns, and here he is door knocking with his daughter. But the interesting thing about him attending our campaigns, what he thinks about door knocking is this. He posted this on Facebook. My parents came to know Christ because of a guy named Tab Hill and this method of door knocking. And because of that knock on the door, my whole family has become Christians. And now here he is, door knocking with his daughter. Somebody else that came to one of our American mission campaigns is Araceli. She is the secretary for the Bridge Avenue Church of Christ in Willasco, Texas. And here's what she had to say when she was encouraging people to door knock. She didn't know about the Church of Christ until a man named Dwayne knocked on her door and invited her to Vacation Bible School as a child. And she went. And she kept going, and she studied, and she was converted. But like a lot of people, she fell away. And she had always thought, man, I need to get back in church. But she was shy and she was embarrassed. And so, wouldn't you know it, Trey and Mara Roach knocked on her door again later. And she wasn't even home, but they left a flyer for the church. And when she got home and she got it, that was enough of a wake-up that she went back to the Church of Christ, and she's been faithful ever since. She came to Rome and helped us knock hundreds of doors, and now she's the church secretary at her congregation. Not only that, when she was posting this message to encourage people to go door knocking, when they went door knocking on that day, they met a man. They met this man, Jose. And Jose studied with Araceli and with Carrie Gillis, who now runs Latin American missions. And Jose became a Christian, and he's still faithful to this day. Look at the emotion on his face. Why? Because a woman was reached by door knocking, and she went door knocking and reached someone else. I wanted to share a conversion story with you that was made possible by one of our summer interns. Some of you may know Lydia Todd, who went to Freed Hardeman. But this is Lydia. And here she is with a guy that she knocked on his door, Sam's door. And after several Bible studies, he was immersed into Christ and has been worshiping and fellowshipping with the church since. Now, Lydia recently graduated from Freed. She was here yesterday. And then last night, she flew out to Australia for a mission trip. And when she gets back, she's going to go live in England for 2 years. And the whole reason she's going is to encourage the churches. She's going to spend time with them, get them to do things like door knocking. You know, David Shannon is one of my heroes. If you're allowed to have favorite preachers, he's mine. He's a great speaker, but also a great person, and he lives out what he talks about. And so he's been an inspiration to me. But he had this to say about door knocking. He said, some of the best friends that my wife and I have ever had are people we met through door knocking. He said one particular young lady, she only answered the door because she thought it was the pizza guy. And they had set up a study with her, baptized her, and they've been close friends now for like 10 years. And David said, we love her like a daughter. In this video that he did for us to help promote door knocking, David also made a good point. He said, you can't visit a church that you don't know exists. People can't visit a church they don't know exists. In 2019, we came up with this idea to have a brotherhood-wide door knocking day. I saw two brothers, one in Oklahoma, and Carrie, who I mentioned in Texas. I was on Facebook one night scrolling, and back-to-back they made posts saying, we went door knocking today, this is still working, no one's doing it in the religious world or business world, otherwise there's an opportunity. And from that post, we came up with this idea, man, they're right, let's see if we can get churches to do this. And in 2019, we came up with this idea to have a brotherhood-wide door knocking day, not organized completely by any one of us. World Bible School helped us announce it. They made it their own. World Video Bible School helped us announce it. GBN helped us announce it and made it their own. And with that cooperative work, we had 600 churches of Christ go door knocking on the same Saturday in October. 600. Can you imagine getting 600 churches to do anything? I believe God's hand was in this. More than 4,000 Christians went out on that day and knocked more than 62,000 doors. Now, this will be the fourth year that we've done this, and we would love for your congregation to participate. There's no cost to do this. We don't have our logo on this because it's not ours. We just host the website, and that's it. But if you'll go to this website, nextdoor.housetohouse.com, you can register for free, you can get tips, you can see people who have done it and made it work, and you can learn from the ways that they do it. The first Saturday in October this year. Now, I want to share a few stories from the door knocking day that we had, a couple of the door knocking days we've had over the past years. Brent Misseldine is the preacher for the Prattville Church of Christ. And he said this, there was a lot of excitement and positive comments from people who went out in their neighborhood to meet their neighbors. They invited and left material. We had a Friends and Family Day the next day, which had 549 people, which is an increase of 150 people from our regular attendance. And Brent said that the majority of that seems to have come from them going out into their community. Now, what the devil would like you to believe is that going to somebody's house and saying, I care about you, would you like to study the Bible, would you come to church, won't work. But as long as there are Christians and non-Christians, that kind of thing will always work. I want to mention Brent again in a minute at the end at a point I want to make, but just keep this story in your mind. This is from the place that Lance is at, Chalmette, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. This sister was met in 2019 on their door knocking day, and a few weeks later she was baptized. Now, I don't like to just find out someone's been baptized and then find out that they've left the faith or never came back. So I try to follow up with as many of these stories as I can. And so I asked Mark, the preacher there, a few months ago about this lady's faithfulness. And he said she was faithful up until the day she got COVID and passed away. It wasn't just that the church met her, but it's that they did it when they did it. One of these things happened, another knock on the door that led to a study at the Warner Robins Church of Christ. This story is from our hometown of Rome, Georgia. When we hosted that AMC that I mentioned, we invited the Callahan Street Church of Christ in Rome to come participate with us. Make it yours. Use our building. Bring your members. You ask questions. You go door knocking with us. And they did, and it lit a fire under them. In the past 2 years, they baptized 10 from door knocking, including this sister. And I was blessed to speak at their congregation twice in the past 6 months. And each time, do you know who was there? Up front, smiling and learning? This new sister. And how did they meet her? Just by caring enough to go to her house and to invite her. We had someone from the Centerville Road Church of Christ in Garland, Texas. This lady here moved from New York to live with her cousin, be around her cousin in Texas. Not a member of the church. And she hears the announcement, we're going door knocking on Saturday, door knocking day. So she goes up to the preacher and says, can I go? We're just like, oh, you're not even a Christian. Yeah, sure, you can go. You can go with us. Halfway through door knocking day, she said, uh-oh, I don't think I'm saved. And she stopped door knocking with her group, went to the building and had a Bible study, and was baptized. This had nothing to do with the person on the other side of the door. But what did it do? It changed the person that cared enough to knock. I could share at least 100 more stories like this from the past 5 years. I don't like, and this is just a personal thing, I guess. I know there's a place for the polished speaker who's just a rah-rah, and sometimes that kicks me in the tail and gets me motivated. But I love when people actually do it. And even if it's sloppy and not that well presented, they share it because I want to know what it looks like to have actually done the thing. Before we wanted to share any information about door knocking, we wanted to field test it. So in the past 5 years with these AMCs that we have done, one in Rome, Georgia, one at the Carnes Church of Christ in Knoxville, and one at the Covington Church of Christ in Tennessee, and then the 2 this year, Cary, North Carolina, and down in Texas as well. So that's 5. We have field tested door knocking, and we have kept up with statistics. How many doors are knocked? How many members of the church go knock? How many people are home? How many people agree to a Bible study? How many people visit? How many conversions come out of that? With just these 5 congregations, we've reported 75 baptisms from door knocking over the past 5 campaigns. This is from Rome. We knocked 2,400 doors. 1,000 contacts were made. 360 of those people gave us information that we could follow up with. My wife, probably Michael, a couple of our elders have studied with some of these people. We had 4 baptisms and 2 restorations at the time, even during the midst of coming out of COVID. That's not to mention the congregation across town that joined us and has had more baptisms than we have had from it. We also did the same thing at AMC in Covington. Here are some of our statistics on that. They since have had about 20 baptisms, not just from the people they've knocked on the door, although that's about half of them, but also from the people of the congregation who were in the pews who weren't saved yet, who were listening, who were looking, who were learning, and it motivated the members to care enough to say something to the people that they already knew. At the next one that we did in Knoxville, 3,000 doors were knocked, 377 contact cards were collected, 10 baptisms from Carnes, 6 from West End, and 1,500 cards sent to some of these people whose doors were knocked on. What kind of impression does that make if you open your mailbox and you have 30 cards? We did these 2 this year, and I just want to show you the percentages of what we mean by percentages, a positive impact at the door. They were willing to give us a prayer request. They were willing to say, I might be interested in a study. They gave us their information so we could follow up. 28% of the doors at Cary, North Carolina. 27% of the doors in Texas. Now, I posted this on Facebook a while back. Some of you may have seen it. But some of my friends that went door knocking at the one in Texas, they knocked 1,000 doors, like I said. Actually, let's just go back and look how many doors they knocked exactly. They knocked 2,831 doors. But from that, 89 of those people came to a community meal that they were invited to. 89. What would your congregation look like with 89 new visitors? Now, out of that, the next morning, 20 of these 89 that have packed this building for the meal, like I'm glad the fire marshal didn't come by. That doesn't look very safe. But 20 of these people were there at Sunday morning services the next morning. 89 is not 2,831. And 20 isn't even 89. But what if there's one person? Is that worth a week? Is that worth some heat? Is that worth the effort to try? Well, it was for this congregation, and they're seeing some of the benefits of that. So I want to talk about this. All of us have probably door knocked and been discouraged by it. So I want to talk about a couple things that don't work as well. Anytime you go and a Christian talks to a non-Christian, if they act like they should, that's a good thing. That's a positive. And so I put this in there very carefully. These don't work as well. And maybe you've seen some of these too. Imagine you go to set the table at your house for a meal. You put everything out, you get the water poured, and then you go out to the garden to get the food to put on the table. Problem is you have not cultivated the soil. You did not plant a seed. You did not water it, and so there is no meal for you to enjoy. In some ways, if we do this thing wrong, that's what we're trying to do at the door. We're trying to cash in on a cold contact, that we've done no tilling of the ground, no watering, no planting. And so it can be a hard thing, and cold door conversions are rare. But the goal of this is to do it with enough consistency that you build a relationship and that people look forward to you coming. Here are some things that I think don't work as well from our experience of door knocking on 15,000 doors in the past 3 or 4 years. A couple of things that work but don't work as well. Would you like to study the Bible? Now, it's not that that doesn't work. David's got a great story. David Shannon, his son at 15 years old, knocked on the door and said, would you like to study the Bible? And the lady opened up her door and said, I've been reading my Bible. There it is, open on my coffee table, praying God would send someone. I think you're an answer to a prayer. Eric Lyons does a video on our nextdoor.housetohouse.com website. He and his wife, Jana, were door knocking. And they knocked on this door and said, hey, would you like to study the Bible? This woman did the exact same thing, opened up and says, there's my daughter. We've been reading Acts chapter 10, praying for God to send us someone. I don't know if you know Bill Ward, but Bill Ward's somebody you should send a Facebook friend request to. That guy is a character. He is at the Forest Park Church of Christ in Valdosta. I bet he's door knocked every home in Lowndes County 5 times. But this is what Bill does. He says he goes to the door with one objective. Don't have hands full of everything. Take one piece of material and leave it, but ask them at the door for a Bible study. And here's what Bill said. They met a guy on door knocking day in 2019 in this manner. Would you like to study the Bible? And just a few days ago, 4 years later, he baptized that guy. Bill said this. He said he went to a congregation that was dying a few months ago. They were in the low 20s. And the spirit was, we quit. And so Bill got them fired up and got them to go out into the community and to door knock. And in that 4 to 5 month period, whatever it is, Bill says the congregation is now in the mid-30s. Now, you're talking mid-30s, that still sounds kind of depressing sometimes, but think about what we were doing, 20, and we've given up. Now we're 30, and we're fired up. Well, why? Because Bill went to the door and said, do you want to study the Bible? So it's not that it doesn't work. It's just sometimes it doesn't work as well as some of the things we're building up to. Second, what else works but maybe not as well? Will you come to our gospel meeting? I know every preacher within a 2-hour radius of our congregation, and I love visiting other churches. A goal of mine is to go to all churches within like a 3-hour radius at some point in my life. I still can't get to every gospel meeting as much as I love them because it's hard, you're busy. Sometimes our community has a schedule that's too full to come to something that sounds and feels overly formal and religious. And it's not that it doesn't work, but not as many people are interested in coming to that from a cold knock on a door as has been in the past. But again, I'm sure all of us know somebody who has been reached that way. It's not a waste of time, but neither is it the most effective thing. All right, well, what does work maybe best? I want to give you a few ideas that you can try at home. The first thing is this, though. Just show that you care. You don't have to go to the door with a gimmick. You're not selling something. If you genuinely care for the people behind the door, they'll be able to tell. And if you don't, they'll be able to tell that too. So the first thing is just do you care about your neighbors? Second thing I think would be helpful is this. Just make it normal. How many of you pray before a meal with your family? You can raise your hand. Or not. If you don't, I'll think you don't pray. And then I'll judge you for that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, because that's normal. All right? My family has made some things that are a little weird normal. Do any of you open a gift on Christmas Eve instead of waiting and doing them all on Christmas? Anybody do a Christmas Eve gift? We did that growing up. For some of you, it's like, that's weird. What are you doing? Santa hasn't even come yet. Well, but that's for my family, that's normal. We have a golf cart. And one day I chased my kids through the yard like I was going to hit them on it. I wasn't, but I got close enough that they thought I might. And they love that now. So if you drive by the Alabama highway in Rome, Georgia, and you look to the right, you may see some maniac driving a golf cart looking like he's about to chase his kids. And I have to bump him occasionally to make them really believe it. But that is weird, I know, but it's normal for our family. What can you do to make spiritual, godly things normal for your family? When Joshua makes that big speech and he says, look, I don't know what you guys are going to do. You may worship the gods of your father on the other side of the flood. You may choose to follow Baal. You may be indifferent. I don't know. But for my house, we're going to follow the Lord. Joshua was basically saying, this is what's going to be normal at my house. I can't control what goes on in your house. Here's what you should do, but here's what we're going to do in my house. What does your house do? Could you make it normal to pray with your waitress every time she comes and says, I'm going to take your order to the kitchen? What if you just said, and this is an idea I got from the Youngs from Long Island, said, hey, we're going to pray for our food when it comes. Can we pray for you about anything? Has anybody ever done that? Have you seen a waitress break down and cry before? Because I have. You'll find somebody occasionally that just says, well, pray for me, or no, thank you. But the majority of people are really impressed by that. We did that at PTP last year, and a lady just put her head in her hands and started boo-hooing. She just lost her house to a fire, going through some tough stuff with her son. But that could be normal for your family. Every time we go, we take out an Authentic Christian podcast card, and we put it with our payment at the restaurant. And that is just normal for us now. If we run out, I have to tell GBN I'm out. Because that's normal for us. So what can we do to make these spiritual things normal? But here's the thing that we do after that. After our heart's right, and after we really do care and we're willing to show that, and we make it normal to do these things, what we do that we've seen great success with in our culture is, can we pray for you? Now, this does a lot of things. First of all, it shows our genuine care and compassion, but it also opens someone up. It breaks down barriers. They know that you're not trying to sell them anything or that you have good intentions. And a lot of times people will pour out their lives to you. And if they give you a prayer request, you know what they've just done? They have let you into their life. Does anybody know this guy? All right, so Pat, I don't know Pat, but I know Pat is an elder here at Creve Hall, and the elders here at Creve Hall give Pat a hard time because they say that he has a Waffle House ministry. So do you know what that entails, a Waffle House ministry? The first thing is you have to eat at Waffle House. So I guess Pat's really, really good at that. The second thing that Pat does is every single time he has a waitress, he asks them, "Can I pray for you about anything?" There are members at Creve Hall that are Christians now because Pat eats at Waffle House and asks his waitress if he can pray with them. Now, Pat has a third thing that he does that he's very successful with as well. But if you really want to know, find Pat and ask him what that is. And so I don't know Pat, but what I know about him, I love because he prays with people and he brings them to the Lord through doing that. We have found the same thing that Pat does. Praying with people tears down the barriers. When you knock on the door, introduce yourself and just ask them, is there anything that we can pray for you about? Now, if they say yes and they let you into their life like that, have someone with you who can write down what it is that they're saying. Take notes. Pray at the door with them if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, if you'll just do it a few times, you'll eventually get comfortable. Everything you do in life, you didn't feel comfortable when you started. I saw you trying to learn to walk. You fell over a bunch of times. Just give that thing up. No, I just got up and I tried again. Same thing with this. So what if it's awkward a few times? It won't be after 5 times. It won't be after 10. And you'll be a pro at it not much longer after that. Pray with them at the door. But then send them cards later. Don't waste an opportunity. They're opening up to you and you never follow up with them. You better take down their address, their prayer request. I know what Lance does. He says, "Hey, can I follow up with you in a week to see how Catherine's doing?" Well, sure, that'd be great. And he does it. Follow up with them. Send them cards. You know, we have some older members who care, but sometimes maybe they don't know what to do. They can send a card. Imagine how they're going to feel on a Sunday morning if somebody they've sent 20 cards to comes walking through the door. And it works. Call, visit, follow up. A second thing that we've done in addition to prayer requests is community service. I just was thinking a few years ago about our widows. You know, James says pure religion is helping those who can't help themselves, the poor, the orphan, the widows specifically. And I thought, man, are we doing a good enough job taking care of our widows? Well, what do they need? Well, how do we know if we don't ask? And so I created this form, and I created it. My first version wasn't very good, to be honest with you. I had a bunch of stuff on there that was stupid and didn't really apply to widowed people. But I sent it to a couple people. That's their whole life as they work with widows and widowers. And they shared it with their group of widows and widowers, and they sent back this, which was much, much better. But this is something we started mailing out to our widows and widowers every month for the first 6 months. And then now we mail it out once a quarter. And when these come back to me at the building, I will find one of our guys who's a blue-collar worker who's good at stuff that I'm not, and I will pair him up with a widow. Or we have a couple college students who have helped with some of the electronic stuff. And it gives people that might not have another way to help an avenue, but it also makes sure our widows and widowers are taken care of. And if you want this, by the way, I'm going to have my contact information at the end. I will email you a copy with your congregation's information on it if you want it. And no charge or anything like that. But this form, we took it and we said, okay, that's for our congregation, for our widows. But also, what can we do to make this for our community? And so instead of thank you for your service to our church, now how can we serve you? We changed it to community. You know what's interesting about this? This is Trenton Osborne, a friend of mine. He was our youth minister for a while. He lived next door to a woman, and her husband passed away. And they asked Trenton to do the funeral, and he did. All at the same time, something that was going on is one of her best friends was a member of the church at Oak Hill. We sent her this form, and she sent it back to us with a lot of work that needed to be done. And one of our elders and some of our men went over and did that. And you know what she did? She told her friend about that. And you know what started happening? She started coming to church with her friend. And you know what happened? She was baptized. Now, which one of those things was it? None. It was a combination of what Trenton had done, being a good neighbor. It was a combination of this lifelong friendship. And it was a combination of her seeing, man, that's a church that takes care of their widows. But when we hosted this AMC in 2021, we took this form and we made it a community service form. And we would go to the door, we would knock on the door and say, hey, we're just a congregation in this area. We're your neighbor. We care about you. Is there anything that we can help you with? And we're going to leave you this sheet. So if you don't have something off the top of your head, if you'll just send this back to us, and I have our phone number, our address, my cell phone number, an email, whatever, then you can send it back. And we had several people in our community reach out. Now, will people abuse this? Yes. But part of what you sign up for when you sign up for Christianity is to be abused and taken advantage of. Now, we have to be wise and draw the line somewhere, and I'm not saying we make somebody's mortgage payment who's driving around in a Tesla or something like that. But I am saying if we have to mow a few yards that doesn't result in anything, so be it. And that's what this forum has allowed us to do. You can also follow up after mailing house to house. What we did after we started all this door knocking stuff, we thought, well, is there any way that we could provide something that churches could take as they're going door knocking? If you visit our website, we have one thing from every brotherhood work that we promote. Because this isn't about moving copies of house to house. We had churches send in pictures. They had ordered hundreds of World Bible School study Bibles that they gave out. The door hangers from World Video Bible School, all these different things. So it doesn't matter what you use. But as an example, we encourage churches that are already mailing out house to house every month, skip 1 month, order this door knocking issue, and hand deliver it to your community. You've been mailing them house to house for 6 months or 6 years. Knock on their door and say, hey, it's us that's been sending that to you. What do you think about it? Do you read it? We subscribe to this for you for free. What do you think? That pulls down a lot of defenses. We've had people about to shut the door who said, oh, I thought you were Jehovah's Witness. You do house to house? We love house to house. When we door knocked in Rome a couple of years ago, we had a lady open her door a little bit. She had one of those tables where you set your keys every day when you come in, and she had clippings of house to house articles on her wall. Now, she hasn't become a Christian yet, but do you think she's closer? How would we have ever known about that if we had not knocked on her door? We've had so many people from dozens, if not hundreds of congregations say, yeah, we love your material. We use it in our Sunday morning Bible classes at the Baptist church. And I think, well, we'd love to have the whole hour, the whole service, but we'll take what we can get. People, even in the denominational world, will sometimes teach from these things. The cold door conversions are rare, but something like following up with people you've already started bridging a gap with can help. We've also created a free resource. We don't want churches to feel like we're trying to talk them into door knocking because we want to sell copies of house to house. We don't want churches to even have to have a budget necessarily to do this. But if you want to leave something, we've created this. It's on our website. And if you email me, I'll send you a customized copy for free. But it's something you can leave with the home. It's something you can take notes on and take back with you to follow up later. We just call it a take and a leave. But if you want a copy of this, I can give it to you. You can print them off, and it won't cost you anything more than a little bit of printer ink. If you visit our website, it's just nextdoor.housetohouse.com. We've got a lot of free resources. We link to the World Bible School Study Bible. I think we linked to maybe Lance's book, Transformed. But another thing that's going to be important if you're going to door knock and actually have it be effective is you've got to be consistent. One of the worst things you can do is go into your community, generate 1,000 contacts, and never follow up with any of them. If you have to knock on 10 doors and that's it, if that's all you can follow up with and nobody else will help, that'll be better than knocking on 100 that you can't follow up with. Be consistent. New people move in all the time. There's a brother, Doug Couch from White Bluff, who is in the exhibit hall. He works with the Nashville School of Preaching. And he just pulled me aside before my lesson and was telling me they do our New Movers program, which is we let you know every time there's somebody new that moves into your community. We mail them a copy of House to House, we mail them a postcard, and we give you the address so you can follow up. And it's just $1 per address. But Doug said they went and knocked on somebody's door to deliver a little basket, welcome to the community. And that family has been coming and has been studying and is close to becoming Christians because new people move into our communities all the time. But then, not only that, the same people go through different life stages. I have stories of people who have been mad that somebody knocked on their door and slammed the door, just like Charlie Gomez, who's now an elder. But what happened? Well, things changed in his life. And the same thing is true in our community. Someone who may be hostile towards God may change their mind when they're looking death in the eyes because they've got cancer. They may be mourning, having loneliness, depression, and they may be open now in a way that they were never open before. And what if you just set a small goal? I'm not going to knock every door in my community. I'm just going to knock 10 of them, just once a month. You know, you got a student at Heritage. Does the community know any of the students? What about the guy that's just right across the driveway? You leave every day and you pass it. And what about Freed Hardeman? You got your dorms there. What does the community think? Does the neighbor across the street think the school's good or bad? What can you do to help that and to affect that? What if you just knocked on the same 10 doors, every 2 or 3 months to see if you could help? Set some small goals. But I want to end with these last couple of things. There's some other reasons that you should consider door knocking. One thing is that all that you see when you door knock, what we've talked about so far, is really just the tip of the iceberg. But here are some other things that door knocking does. It keeps us on mission. My job is not to repave the parking lot, as important as that is. And I like a good padded pew as much as the next guy. And I hope VBS has the best graphics that we've ever had. That'd be really great. But none of that is the point. None of that's the point. I know we're going to have a hard time getting the community to drive over potholes or to sit in the floor, so we need those things. But those things are secondary. The mission is to seek and to save the lost. And if you door knock, I guarantee that will keep that before your eyes and before the eyes of the congregation. Something else that it does is it builds relationships. We had a woman, and I love her. I'm not going to mention her name in case she watches this, but she's just not that involved. But she wants to be. And I can tell she just doesn't know how. And she's distracted. But I told her about the door knocking day, and I asked her to come with our group, and she did. And wouldn't you know it, when she was knocking on doors, she cried 3 or 4 times. What do you think that did for her? What do you think that did for the people that were in her group to see her get so touched over spiritual things? It built friendship. But then finally in this idea, the most important thing is I think that it changes us. Maybe it's not those outside the building that need changing first. Maybe it's me and you. We may sit in the pews faithfully, even for years, and never share the gospel. One of the biggest needs is for us to go with the gospel, and door knocking can jumpstart that in us. I want to prove that to you. This is a picture of Lamar Parker, our preacher Michael here, and my family know Lamar well. And Lamar is an awesome dude, rough background. You can see he's still got the ponytail here and the scruffy appearance and stuff like that, but a heart of gold would give you the shirt off of his back. So he and his wife were baptized on the first day of our door knocking campaign that we hosted in Rome. So when we announced that we were going to door knock, I was like the rah-rah guy at church. Hey, we're going door knocking. It's going to be the best thing ever. Everybody come. If you love the Lord, you'll be there, in front of the congregation. Well, Lamar comes right up to me and says, hey, Brother Matt, I want to go with you and learn from you. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning myself, but sure, let's go. And so Lamar and I went door knocking. And here's a picture a few months before that, actually. He and his wife at a gospel meeting that we went to. Our preacher was preaching, and so Lamar and his wife went. We took Maggie with us, who was 4 at the time and is 5, and she's waving for those who care to see her. But she's the best doorbell ringer in the Brotherhood, just in case you were wondering. So me and Lamar, looking rough, who are these two guys? But then we have this cute little 5-year-old with us. And you know what happened? We had a lot of great conversations. We prayed for a couple of people that cried. We have sent them cards. We've added them to our house-to-house mailing list. And you know how many of those have become Christians so far? 0. But you know what did happen? At the end of this day, Lamar said, I've got a friend that needs to know about Jesus. When we get home, I'm going to call him and tell him. And you know what I said to my shame in my head? Good for you, buddy. Great idea. You should totally do that. That's great. But you know what I thought? I don't know if that'll work or not. Shame on me. Lamar went home and he called this friend. And he studied with him for 3 hours over the phone. And he called me and he said, Matt, my friend wants to be baptized. And I said, okay, well, meet me at the building. Let's do it now. And he said, well, there's a problem, though. He lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. And he said, I don't know any Christians outside of Rome yet. I don't guess. Well, you know the first church I ever preached at? Indianapolis, Indiana. Shelbyville Road, Church of Christ. 10 minutes from this man's house. And here he is the next morning, after studying with the local church, being baptized. Now, I don't like to just share a story and then, well, yeah, but he left the next day. So I checked up with the church before I came here, and they texted me a picture of his directory picture. And I have cropped out his email address and home number in case the internet gets weird one day or something. But he's still faithful today. Why? Not because of what happened on that side of the door, but because of what happened on this side of the door. It changed my friend, and it took away some of the cynicism in my heart. I told you earlier about Prattville and how they participated in the door knocking day, and that day, they had no baptisms result from their knocks on the door. But what it did do was embolden one of their members to go home and to share the gospel with a friend of theirs. This guy's name is Chad White. We're Facebook friends. If you want to be Facebook friends with him and see him as the real person he is, you can do that as well. But Chad was converted by a friend who was emboldened by knocking on the door enough to reach out to him and to teach him the gospel. And now Chad's a Christian. Not only that, but this congregation shared the same thing. Matt Thomas is in Pickering, Ohio, I believe it is. This guy went door knocking for the first time, a really shy brother who really was timid, to be honest, aren't we all sometimes? But from knocking on the door, he was emboldened enough to share the gospel with a coworker. And after several weeks of study, here he is baptizing the coworker. Look at the face. Wow, how did that happen? because he knocked on a door. But it wasn't what happened on that side of the door. We can't control that. But it's about what happened on this side of the door. And it changed him, and it changed her for good. Now, I also want to share this with you. Just think about this. I really changed my life about 4 or 5 years ago when I started getting mentors. I want to be a better evangelist. Let me talk to people who are not talking theory. I don't want the comprehensive list of what doesn't work, who's actually baptized a lot of people and helped them stay faithful. I want to talk to them on a regular basis. I would like to be rich at some point. I got 3 little girls. Girls they're expensive, always outgrowing clothes. They're going to get married someday. Maybe they'll go to Freed-Hardeman. If I'm going to help them with that, I got to start making some money. I'm in ministry. You don't get loaded that way. But that's okay. So what do? Well, if I want to make some money, I find someone who's a member of the church, and I try to learn from them. I think I'm so much better off. I think we would be better off if we did that. What area do you want to improve in? Is it mental health? Is it fitness? Is it writing? Whatever. Find someone who's good at it and learn from them. So just think about this. Think about people who are in favor of door knocking. I just want to share a few examples for you to think about. Do you know who believes in door knocking? David Shannon, president of Freed-Hardeman, the best speaker that I know. You know who else believes in it? Andrew Itson. He was at Robertsdale in Alabama, smaller church. He helped them really grow. Has just started working for the Madison Church of Christ in Huntsville, Alabama. They were 850 pre-COVID. They had 1,200 at their services a few weeks ago. Now, not all of that's off the strength of door knocking. I'm not saying he baptized 500 people from knocking on the door, but what I'm saying is the kind of person that can help a church grow like that says part of that is going out into your community and knocking on their doors. You know who else believes in it? My coworker, Rob Whitaker. Now, Rob has baptized over 500 people, and I would say probably like 95% of those are still faithful. And in the past 3 years since he's been working with us, he's helped churches baptize 2,000 or 3,000 people. And Rob is somebody who does a lot of that based off the strength of knocking on the door. Kerry Gillis, who's the director of Latin American missions, is somebody I've already talked about. He believes on that, not just, of course it works in Jamaica and Peru and all these places, but what we're saying is if you do it the right way, consistently it works here. And that's a message Kerry shares. Home Missions has a table that's in this room over here. Go ask them what they think about door knocking. They have helped churches baptize, I think it's 350 so far this year. Ask Gospel Share Ministries what they think about door knocking. The biggest problem to all of this is that sometimes we don't believe it works. And we don't believe people want the gospel. And so we say door knocking is hard and it doesn't work. And we say this is hard and it doesn't work and that's hard. And we come up with a list of what doesn't work. But instead of, and I don't mean to be mean, but instead of listening to the guy who's disgruntled in the business meeting, who's never baptized anybody, maybe we should listen to those that have. And not that door knocking is the cure-all, but it seems to be a piece of the puzzle. And David said this in our video. It's always a good day when Christians talk to non-Christians. I want to share a couple things quickly and we'll be done. This is a website we've created. We've got tips for door knocking from lifelong door knockers. We've got videos that you can share that will encourage people. You can sign up to receive tips. The resources thing is where we link to the World Bible School Bible and all these other things. But nextdoor.housetohouse.com. The idea is the world starts next door. But then I want to share 2 last things and we'll be done. This is my contact information. If you have any questions for me, any corrections, you just want to reach out and be my friend, I would like some new friends, then you can connect with me, email, social media, and that's my cell phone number. But here's the last thing, and I don't know if we'll have sound, but the sound won't really matter. I want to end with this video that we created. A friend of mine made this. And this isn't real time, this isn't live, this didn't happen, this is staged, but this represents what's happened hundreds of times the past few years when we'll go take the gospel to our neighbors. See if you can hit play on that. I don't know if you're able to or not. Yeah, see if you can hit play again. Thank you, guys.